Hey everyone, how you doing? Hi, decided to go for a walk now. It's a little late. I usually do it like in the afternoon. It's a little late, but I was kind of busy, so I'm gonna continue with this my little video over here. Same. You know, talk about the same thing I was talking about before. Like this is my third video over here, so please bear with me. This is all new to me. So far, so good. I am reaching people, so that's good. And like I said, I'm only giving people advice with what you're going through. By no means, I don't want you to do anything stupid. Like for instance, I have a motorcycle, and when I was going through all that stuff, I didn't ride my bike, because everyone knows that, even if you're not going through that, you have to be really vigilant when you're on the bike in general anyway, because everybody's on the phone, and you need your mind intact when you're on the bike. You can't be thinking about stuff like that. That's how you get killed, get injured, and then you're really gonna have problems. So I would recommend. If you're struggling with separation and pending divorce, whether you're a man or a woman, you should probably stay off the bike. If you want to vent, you want to take a ride, so you won't have to think about it. That's a little different. I would definitely recommend doing it like on an open road somewhere, not in the city, because if you're struggling with this separation and you're having a hard time, you can get injured. You can definitely get injured, get hurt. And if you have kids and stuff like that, let alone get killed. Nobody wants to see anybody get hurt on a bike, but you could get incapacitated to the point where you can't do anything at all. Then you're really going to have problems. So I would recommend staying off the bike until you're ready to get back on there. Secondly, I want to talk about being when you're struggling. People, everybody struggles with separation, and again, this is for people who are struggling, not for people who decide to go their different ways mutually. Amicably, because if it's amicable and that's what you both wanted, then it doesn't look like you want to get back together. This video really isn't for you. So this content here is for people like me, who are struggling with separation and dealing with it, emotions and frustration, anger, all this stuff. Just having a hard time moving forward a little bit. It feels like you're stuck. You can't go anywhere, especially during inclement weather like this, where you're kind of like stuck in a house all the time because the weather's not great outside and it's cold, and you're gonna find yourself in the house a lot, and your mind is gonna play tricks on you, your brain's gonna play tricks on you, and it's going to play tricks on you. Trust me, it's not gonna be a good feeling at all. So that's why you have to go for a walk. Go to the gym. I don't care what time it is. I don't care how you're feeling at that particular time, what time it is. Get out of the house. Go for a walk. Go for a jog. Go, if you have a bike, go for a bike ride, a cycle. I wouldn't go to a bar or anything like that, because that's the last thing you need to do is, just go drinking, when you're feeling sad, because they're just gonna just make it worse, to be honest with you. So I would say that you're gonna be going through some really tough times, and like I said in my other two videos, there's no time frame. Your body needs to heal. Sometimes when you do some leisure activity, hobbies and stuff like that helps for sure, without a doubt. But If you don't do anything like that, then it's going to take a lot longer. And your body needs to probably go through that. That's the only way you're going to heal. Go to groups. Talk about it. That all helps. If you're not a person that doesn't like group, like if you're antisocial, then this is something that you might be interested in. And getting on my channel and taking a walk with me and talking about it. Or at least listening. You can always comment too as well. And I try to get back to you as soon as I can, because I'm always on the phone looking at the contents and see if anybody responded, or want some kind of advice, So what I would suggest is, just get out of the house, go for a walk. I don't care what time it is, because, your brain, your mind is gonna play. It's gonna play with you. It's gonna mess you up. You have to clear your mind of everything, especially anything that's got to do with your wife, especially if she's with someone else. You don't want to be thinking about that, because you can't prevent it. It's already happened. If she's with someone else, there's really nothing you can do about it, nothing. And I don't recommend, bothering her, just leave her alone, let her figure it out. Let her do what she has to do, Maybe she'll come back, and maybe she'll realize that she made a mistake, or didn't give you a second chance or a third chance, And but you have to, like I said before, you have to. If you want to keep your wife, if you want to stay married and you love her, man, you have to change everything about you. You have to do a 360. You have to, flip the switch, so to speak. It's not easy for people who are, if you have OCD, you have, a routine, and you just are who you are, and you've always been like that. It's not sustainable. You're not going to keep the woman you love, or the man that you love, acting the way you're acting. That's why you're in this predicament right now. So, just get out the house, do something constructive, go see some friends. If your friends know what you're going through, play some board games or something like that. That helps too as well. You wanna do something constructive. Because like I said, your mind, this is, this video here is really basically about your mind, how your mind really deals with, things like that. You're if you're hurting, and you're hurting like you've never been hurt before. Everybody's gone through something dramatic, whether it's a death in the family, even a relationship breakup, because, this is, you're married, you're not boyfriend and girlfriend, it's really, you could do the same, I guess, but this is more for like people who are married, because it's a little different when you're married, it's not, you have obligations, and, you marry someone so they won't have to be your boyfriend and girlfriend, you have to treat it completely different. The thing is that, you have to definitely, take your mind off of it. Do something constructive, play some board games, get out of the house. Your mind's gonna be playing tricks on you. It's gonna have you thinking some really terrible things. And some of it might be, might be true. She might be with this guy right now. Spending the night over his house. But there's nothing you can do about it. But that's the one thing you don't want to think about, is what is she doing right now? Who she's with? Should I go over there? Which you don't want to do. Y'all leave her alone before you get a protective order on you. Then you can't go over there again. You get yourself in trouble, and you don't want that either. Especially if you have kids, then you won't be able to see your kid as much as you do if it's cordial. But just gotta let her do things, let the dust settle. That's what you really want to do. Let the dust settle, because I didn't do that, in the beginning, and for months, I did some things I should have never done either. I should have let the dust settle a long time ago. It probably would have been a little bit easier for me to accept what's going on, but I didn't want to accept it. I still don't accept it. I don't want my wife to divorce me, but it looks like she made up her mind, and there's nothing I can do about that. I'm going to be hurt. I'm definitely going to be hurt when, that time comes to sign that divorce paper. There's no doubt about that. I'm dreading that. Don't get me wrong, but, hopefully I'm going to be feeling better about it. But I'm definitely going to be hurt about it. I think she will too. She has to be. You can't be with somebody for 11 years and not be sad about what happened. But you're going to have to, keep cool. You want to be cool about everything. Don't stress anybody out, because you're just going to make it worse for everybody. And it's going to prolong your healing, because you have to heal. Obviously, you have to go through your stuff right here, right now. But, it's your body telling you, you got to heal. So right now you have to go through the pain first. It's like when you get injured, it's going to hurt, but it's going to subside, the longer it takes. But, obviously, with this is a different kind of pain. This is not physical. This is all mental, and, it could be, I don't know if it's physical. Obviously, it's not. It could be physical. I don't know how, in terms of it's not like you're getting hit with something and it hurts for a couple of days or weeks and stuff like that. This is all internal, So, and that's when you really got to be careful, because, depression will, debilitate you, it will kill you. It can cause you to, age a little bit, lose weight. Everything starts to change, man, and it doesn't take long. It doesn't take long. Your body will fight what you're going through, but in the beginning, it's going to be a losing battle. I lost 23 pounds in a month and a half, which is a lot of weight. I went from 196 to 173. I wasn't working out. I wasn't eating. I wasn't doing anything, and I picked up a bad habit. I picked up cigarette smoking. I don't even smoke, and I know I'm doing it because I'm stressed out and I'm depressed, and it's just a phase. I know that once everything settles down, and I'm gonna just do away with it, because, to be honest with you, I don't like the way it smells, and I just don't like it. But I find myself, wanting to do something, which is a terrible habit, and that's what you don't want to do. You don't want to get into doing things you don't really do, especially with drugs. I don't do drugs, so I don't have to worry about that. But you're gonna be compelled to get stoned. When you don't get stoned, you don't want that. It's just gonna feed that negative energy. That's what it's gonna do. Right now you need some positive energy. You need to surround yourself with positive people. That's gonna make you feel better. That's gonna make you forget. At that particular time, about what you're going through, and that's what you want. Now, obviously, you're not going to forget about it entirely, but you want to forget about the stress that you're going through, with this stuff, because, it's different for everybody. For me, it's, I never went through something like this before, and it's been brutal. It's painful, and I didn't have a support system either. I didn't have. Nobody came to check up on me. No one called me. I did it all by myself, man, which is worse. It was brutal. I could have hung myself, or something stupid, and no one would have knew about it unless they came to the house, But that's why you want to keep in touch with people, surround yourself with people who love you. Who are going to be there for you, who are going to keep tabs on you, especially because you're vulnerable, man. I don't care how big you are, I don't care if you're 6'4", 250, or you're 5'2", and 135 pounds, Everybody goes through this stuff differently, and it's brutal, and everybody goes through the same thing, Some lose the weight, some don't lose the weight, some get very depressed and they start eating, and they're gaining weight. But at the end of the day, You know, it's how you go through it. You have to, sometimes you have to like, sometimes you have to go through something like this to change the way that you have been, and for a long time. Sometimes it takes something tragic like this to change the way you think and deal with things, especially with a loved one, especially with your wife, because your wife is not your girlfriend or your husband. I mean, these people, they are the ones that has your best interests, I mean, it's different for boyfriend and girlfriend, but when you're married, you're committed to someone, you just, when you get married, obviously, it's like, this is the person I want to be with forever, and that's how you think. And with my wife, I thought I was going to be for her forever, dude. I really was. I didn't think I was ever going to, like, I didn't want to be with anybody else, man. I love my wife, even though we have friction and we were arguing over just dumb stuff, petty stuff, man. There was friction in the house, but at the end of the day, I love my wife, and I didn't want to be with anybody else. I would rather have friction with my wife, than with somebody else that I'm not having friction with, believe it or not. I didn't want to have friction with my wife. I love my wife, man. The last thing I wanted to do was, argue with her all the time, man. But it was always something petty that kept coming up, stupid stuff, man, and to put us in this situation right here, So, you want to try to avoid that. That's why I tell you, man, you have to decompress your brain, man, like detoxify your brain, get all that negativity out of your system. You really do, because it's just gonna continue, in your next relationship. It's gonna happen again, I know personally, me myself, I can't speak for anybody else, that I'm gonna learn from this. If I don't ever get my wife back and we go ahead and get a divorce, I'm gonna know what not to do with the next serious relationship I get involved in. I am not gonna, because I am not that person any longer. You're gonna learn from it. You will learn from it, or you're gonna be alone and single for a long time, and it's gonna be a point where you're gonna be home alone. You're gonna be lonely a lot, And me personally, I never really been lonely. I've always been in a few long-term relationships. I haven't really been single since '99. I've been in a couple long-term relationships, but this is my first marriage, and like I said, I don't think I was going to divorce wasn't even in my vocabulary. It wasn't. I couldn't fathom, not being with my wife. This time last year, we were laughing and giggling and pillow fighting at the house and talking about, buying investment property and adopting a kid, and having fun, and then, a month and a half later, man, the switch flipped, and that was it. It just, it happened so quick, because, for women, it's emotional, man. You have to, listen, doing things around the house, you have to do these things, you have to, participate. You got to be involved, because, women are going to get, I don't care who you are. I don't care how much of a provider you are. You have to contribute in terms of around the house, especially with your children. That's probably one of the main factors of my, separation, is because I wasn't involved like I should have been. We were home together all the time, but, I didn't cook as much as I should have cooked, that's for sure. Even though I used to before, we were pregnant. I wasn't helping out. We were taking her to school in the morning when I could have, making her breakfast, putting her to sleep, reading a book to her, giving my wife, time to decompress, relax, because she was on her foot a lot. She was standing a lot, and, I should have given her more massages, that's for sure. I did, but not as much as I should have. But, sometimes when a woman is tired and she needs a break, she really does, and you not doing your part, there's gonna be friction, man. They're gonna get pissed off, and they're gonna remember that stuff, man. Don't think they won't. They will remember that stuff. They're gonna remember how, you don't help as much. You don't help as much. And when you don't help as much, they're gonna get mad at you. They're gonna get pissed off, dude. And next thing you know, that intimacy is out the door. You can forget about it, and then you're gonna have friction over that. Then you're gonna argue over that. And let me tell you something, for me, that was one of the problems. I went on a little rant for about 10 minutes about intimacy, and 2 days later she checked out, just like that, dude. If I would have kept my mouth shut, I would have still probably been married, but it could have been fixed, but if a woman doesn't want to be intimate, man, don't get pissed off, because that's her way of telling you that she's mad at you, dude. All right, unless she's really tired, and which they are all the time, but there's gonna be a time where you're not intimate at all for like maybe a month and a half, and if that's the case, then she's mad at you, and so you gotta fix it, dude. You have to really fix it, man, because it's just gonna be worse. That month and a half is gonna go 2 months, 3 months, and then you got problems. Then you really have problems. Then you have to worry about like what's going on. You know what I mean? Or you're gonna get angry. You're gonna start fighting. And that's what I'm trying to tell you, man. You just all these little petty stuff, man. It's not worth it, man. If you love the person that you're married to, don't fight over dumb stuff. Just don't do it, because at the end of the day, you still live in the same house, you love each other, and there's going to be so much tension in the house that one of you is not going to want to be around the other, and that's just the way it is. You're going to be sleeping on the couch, or you're going to be sleeping upstairs, and she's going to be in the bedroom, and you can forget about intimacy. That's going to be the last thing on a woman's mind, because it's all emotional. So and for men, it's physical, but there are guys out there that are understanding, and they know what to do. They know how to fix it. And there's guys like me who knew I was doing something wrong. I knew I had a problem, and I didn't address it like I should have addressed it. And I tried to, but I guess I didn't. At the end of the day, I didn't. I didn't work hard enough on it. And that's why I'm going through this stuff right now. But anybody out there that's going through that or has something similar, it's your mind. So you have to like I say, you have to change everything about you. You really do, because what's going to happen at the end of the day, you got to change. You need it's emotional immaturity. Really, that word comes up a lot. Emotional immaturity. We're all adults here. You have to start acting like an adult. You can't do stupid stuff, and play games and stuff like that, because marriage is sacred, and two people who love each other. I was never against marriage. When I got married, I when I married my wife, I knew that my marriage to my wife was different than any girl I ever been with. It was, because I loved her more than I loved any of the women I ever been with. And it was a different type of love, It was a different type of love, Somebody, you can be involved in a relationship with someone in terms of boyfriend and girlfriend, and not experience that kind of love, because, boyfriend and girlfriend, they come and go sometimes. It's just the way it is sometimes, You're not really obligated to that person. You can kick somebody out and they have to leave, just like that. When you're married, it's a little different. There are things it's your bond is much more complete than it is when you're not married. A marriage bond is totally different than a boyfriend-girlfriend bond. That's for sure. But so I always tell people that. Just you got to reboot your brain, rewire your brain. You really do. Especially, like I said, if you want to stay married, and not get a divorce, and potentially, get a divorce, you're gonna have to rewire your brain. You're gonna have to stop doing the stuff that you're doing. You have to stop the silliness. And I remember my wife's grandmother used to tell me that she was concerned that we were heading. This was before she passed away. She was concerned that we were, potentially on our way to getting a separation and possibly divorce. And I remember her telling me, Robert, I don't know what's going on between you guys, and it's it's really upsetting to me. You know, you guys are so great together and everything, and you know, I hate for you guys to, you know, just throw it all away for something silly. You know, you have to stop the silliness. You know, and I know what you meant by that. You know what I mean? Just stop, you know, the drama. You know, this is your wife. You know, you have to like appreciate your wife. You know, give her what she wants, give her the attention she wants. You know, just, and if your wife it's not into drama, just don't create drama. She doesn't like that. You know, and I'm sure you probably talked about it when you first met. You know, you got to remember all the things that you talked about when you first met. You know, and you're turning into a person, you know, that she says she doesn't want to be with in the beginning. This is why you have friction too as well. You have to remember that. You have to remember some of the things you used to talk about when you first met. You don't want the drama, you don't want this, you don't want that. You know, and then you become that person. When you become that person, I mean, she's gonna be like, well, you know, she's gonna check out, dude. She don't care if she's been with you for 5, 10, 15 years, dude. She's just gonna check out. It's just the way it is. You know, I mean, nobody wants drama. I mean, I certainly didn't want drama. I had it with my wife. I certainly didn't want it, you know, because I love my wife and I would have done anything for her, and I would still do anything for her. But, you know, I loved her, man. You know, I just didn't think, you know, personally, I wasn't going to be able to go through this stuff. But here I am. This is why this is why I have this channel here where I can, you know, if I can keep someone from getting a divorce, you know, if they watch this video here and I can keep them from getting a divorce, you know, if they can change a little bit about what they're doing, that's destroying their relationship, sabotaging the relationship, you know, then it works. Then, you know, then I did my job. I mean, I would like for it to work for myself, don't get me wrong, but, you know, but if I can help someone salvage their marriage, man, that would be great. That would be great, you know, because at the end of the day, it's about, you know, taking care of each other, you know. You take care of her, she takes care of you. That's the way it should be, you know. And you know, no one has really, you know, your best interest, you know, other than your wife or your husband. You know that. They know everything about you. Everything about you. You know, and they still love you. You know, some of the weird things you do. You know, you might be funny. You know, you might be, you know, a serious person. Maybe she likes the way how you dress, you groom yourself and everything like that. You know, maybe you do things that she's never had a significant other do before. You know, that's why she loves you. You know, and decided to be with you and marry you. But you know, right now, you know, you're in a situation right now where you're no longer that person. You know, you're no longer that person. You're no longer that person that she met. Something happened along the way. You know, and like I said, if it's mutual, that this doesn't apply to you, you know. But people change, you know. You know, whether, you know, people get stressed out over their jobs and then they bring that, you know, they take that thing home, and then, you know, then you argue with your wife, you know. It's just a lot of stuff that needs to be addressed. You know, the first thing you need to do is address that, whatever it is that you've done, you have to, you know, just get rid of it. You know, reboot your brain, rewire your brain. Because at the end of the day, it's just, you know, it's the only people that's going to suffer is you guys. And if you have kids, they're going to suffer too, because you're no longer living in the same house together. You know, you're not watching your kid grow up every minute, every day, you know. And that's what I miss the most too as well. And you're going to miss not being able to hug your wife. You're going to miss not being able to kiss your wife. You know, go to sleep in the bed with your wife. Talk to your wife. Go dancing, dude. Those things are crushing. They will crush you. You're gonna miss the way she smells. You know. There's so many things that you're gonna be missing because you decide to be a knucklehead. You know, if you just do what your wife asks you to do, then you won't be in that situation. You know. That's pretty much it right there. You know, because, you know, at the end of the day, your wife or your husband really doesn't want much from you, you know, in terms of like, I mean, they want you to do the essential things that you do, that people do when they're married, you know, still go out to dinner and, you know, have dinner together and, you know, play with the kids, you know, do the homework and stuff like that, cook together, communicate, you know, go vacation. Those are all essential. Those are just the norm. That's what you do. But she still wants you to be that person she met. Trust me, that's the person she fell in love with. And right now, you're no longer that person. You have to rewire your brain, your mind, and get back to that person you used to be. Because at the end of the day, you're not. And that's why you're alone. That's why you're going through this stuff like I am. So my advice to you would be to just, if you're stuck in a house, you got to get out of the house. Go do something. Go for a walk like I do. You go to the gym, bicycle ride, skateboard ride, whatever it is that you do. Find a hobby, get out of the house. Go see your friends, play some board games, stuff like that. You have to keep your mind intact because your mind will play games on you. And don't harass your wife by texting her all the time, calling her all the time. She's not gonna like that. Trust me, she's not gonna like that. Just if you have kids, then obviously you have to have a lot of communication, but you have to leave her alone, and you have to pretty much let let it run its course. You're gonna have to let it run its course. You might not like the outcome, but there's really nothing you could do about it, especially if she's the one that doesn't want to come back to you. There's nothing you could do about it, really. Like I said, this is why I'm telling you now, because if you're not in that situation yet, and you think you have a high probability of getting your wife back, then you need to straighten yourself out. You need to definitely reboot your mind, your brain, do something different. You have to let her know that you changed, and you have to tell the truth about it, and you have to be sincere about it. You cannot lie about changing when you haven't, because you just want to get her back. That's not going to work, because you're not going to have a second chance, and if you do, you're definitely not going to have a third chance. I guarantee you that. She wants to see change. She wants you to be that person she met. Bottom line, that's it, and that's who you have to be. Okay, so I am gonna go right now. So I'll set up another video in another day or two. So please, if you get a chance, man, subscribe, hit that bell, and I'll make another video again, like I said, in another day or two. And just keep your mind positive. Surround yourself with like positive energy. Eat healthy, exercise, and everything will be all right. Okay, peace. See you.